Travis Scott has some of the best production in music, and that's an undeniable fact. But despite having such a unique style, he's still able to constantly switch up the vibe and feeling for each one of his albums. So today I'm gonna be breaking down how Travis produced the music for each one of his projects, as well as making my own beat for each one. Starting off with Pharaoh. And before we start, I want you guys to know that there are timestamps below on the video, just in case you want to know how to make a beat for one specific sound. Now let's get started.
It's a hell of a night for heaven's sakes.
Pharaoh is Travis's first studio project and by far Travis's most raw project to date. He uses very dark synths, melodies, and distorted drums with weirdly chopped samples to give it its unique sound. Since he was still finding his sound as an artist while working on this mixtape has him trying a bunch of different concepts, from very melodic psychedelic music on 16 Chapels
I don't know about you.
to hardcore trap beats I'm sure we've all heard, like Upper Echelon. And two things I noticed that young Travis Scott used to love using in his beats were strings and choirs. You can see his use of strings on the song 16 Chapels, as well as a lot of his earlier work. And as for choirs, they're prevalent on tracks like Bad Mood on You and even the second half of Hell of a Night. I mean, look at an unreleased track like Time Machine. He uses both of them at the same time. But these aren't the only noticeable elements on Pharaoh, because a majority of this mixtape uses samples, from the beautiful Fleet Foxes sample at the start of Hell of a Night to the hardcore flipped Indian beat on Uptown. Samples are all over this album. So for this beat, I'm gonna start off by sampling some strings off of Splice. And I'm not gonna blatantly copy Pharaoh because it was known for trying to be different. So I chopped up the sample and reversed it, and this is what I got. But it wasn't that simple. I wanted to start off with a simple yet misleading intro. Travis's old stuff had intros that switched up all the time, with songs like Naked and Time Machine. So I layered very choir sounding pads on top of a bass, as well as using only hi-hats to get the listener ready for the drums. And then this is what my intro sounded like. My goal with this song or beat is to make it purposely sound as complicated as possible. In his early work, it really sounded like he was trying to put 1,000 things in at once. So that's what I really tried to do with this beat. Travis uses sound effects all the time, as we can see on literally every song, like Naked down to 16 Chapels, whether it's him screaming or doing something crazy. So I obviously had to record my own. Holy shit. I'm gonna get evicted. This album is also covered with beat switches like Bad Mood on You to Hell of a Night, or even the outro to Quintana. So we have to add a beat switch to this beat. I used the bass and pads to help transition from our sample, and then built a loop with a choir preset, and this is what it sounds like. Wow, that beat switch is actually insane. Just wait till you hear the full beat, honestly. And if you want to know where those drums are from, they're from my two kits. The soul kit for the hi-hats and the heavy kit for the 808. I don't usually plug my kits, but they're in the link in bio if you want to get them. And don't worry, unlike every other producer, my kits are actually affordable at $15 a kit. Now back to the video. So after doing some mixing and adding all of the elements together, this is what we get for our final beat. Now let's move on to Days Before Rodeo. Days Before Rodeo is Travis's second project and leans heavily into that synth sound that he's now known for. But back then, he was just exploring it. On this project, he dialed down on a lot of the sampling and really worked on his vocals with emptier beats like Quintana Part 2 and Drugs You Should Try It, which is literally just a guitar loop that plays for the entire song. So for this beat, I started off by finding a good eerie guitar loop. One thing I noticed that Travis did a lot on this album was exaggerate certain notes on the guitar. I mean, just take a listen to Don't Play or Drugs You Should Try It. Both of them exaggerate certain notes of the loop. And he does this effect by simply finding the notes within the loop and then layering it with another guitar. So after finding a guitar loop and then adding some plugins like cutting out the low and high end with an EQ, adding saturation and then a compressor, this is what I got for the guitar loop. Then I found a good dark guitar preset and exaggerated some of the notes that are played on the main loop to give it that dark and exaggerated sound. And now this is where I went crazy with the beat. I found a nice vocal sample off of Splice, chopped it, then used the vocoder plugin and lowered the mix to make it sound like the vocals are layered with an instrument, and this is what I got. After that, I layered the intro and bridges on this beat with a mini Moog synth bass. And then I just went absolutely crazy with the drums. I mean, just look at them. I took huge inspiration from Drugs You Should Try It by using a snap and then a repeating kick and hi-hat at the end of the pattern. I tried to make the pockets super tight for the chorus and then loosen up a little for the verse. So after the chorus, it's just a simple layered kick pattern. I replaced the hi-hats with occasional shakers, added a sub bass, and then I layered the snap with a snare from my dark drum kit. And this is what the drums for both sections sound like. After that, I obviously had to hop on the mic myself and record some vocals. I ended up recording vocals for the intro and bridges since Travis was layering a lot of his vocals on this project and kind of used these distorted vocals as a top line melody. So after everything was done and I gave the song a rough mix, this is what the final beat sounds like. Now let's move on to Rodeo. Rodeo is Travis Scott's debut album, my personal favorite, and is also widely credited as the greatest trap album of all time, and a lot of it is due to its insane production. This album is known for Travis's use of layered vocals as well as beats that consist of choirs, pads, synth basses, but also acoustic or very unique drum patterns. My current 3 favorite songs off of this album are the songs Impossible, I Can Tell, and Maria I'm Drunk. So let's take a deep dive into them before making our own beat. Impossible is the first track we're looking at, and it's a simple chord progression that's looped throughout the entire song. But this song is where Travis gets really experimental, not only with drums but with layering techniques like using an ascending string progression that literally makes you feel like you're floating. He also uses toms to fill up the song, but it also makes the song sound darker, which matches the atmosphere and vibe he was going for. I Can Tell is the second record I chose off this album since it has a very unique pattern. The verses alternate between 2 parts, and these 2 alternating parts are just looped throughout the entire song. I can tell, baby. With some changes in drums here and there to make sure the beat stays interesting. This beat also incorporates a drum fill that we can constantly hear throughout the song. so I decided to take some notes. Maria I'm Drunk is the last record I want to mention, and this is purely because of how the track is introduced. It uses ambience at the start, like cricket noises, to set up an environment, with a bass layered by a piano and some choirs as well. So to start off our beat, I decided to use a choir, layered by a reversed piano and reversed bass, just to keep things a little different. I also added some bird noise ambience. Something I also noticed he does on Maria I'm Drunk and Impossible is the stutter pause. And it usually happens after he lets a sound delay out. I actually have no idea why he does this, like whether it was a creative decision or he just had limited resources at the time. I have no f***ing idea. But I incorporated it into the intro of my beat, and now this is what it sounds like. After that, I had to come up with 2 loops to alternate. So for the first one, I layered a very dark sounding synth, like the one off of Impossible, with a choir pattern, a piano, and a sub bass, and it sounds like this. And for the second loop, I used a loud choir preset with 808s and pads, and it sounds like this. For the drums on the first part of the beat, I wanted to keep it simple yet unique, so I found an acoustic kick, a clap on the 3 and 7 count, a very interestingly patterned hi-hat, and then a perk to fill up some space and pockets. For the second part of the beat, I made sure to use a drum fill I chopped that plays twice every 4 bars, similar to I Can Tell, and when it plays for a second time later in the beat, I made sure to layer it with some claps as well to make the beat interesting, and also give it some versatility. Then I found this live guitar sound off of Splice and chopped it to make a nice thick layer to add to the outro of the song and the portion that plays before the first verse. For the outro, I used the live drum loop, since on the song Never Catch Me, he ends the song with drums, making it seem like he's gonna spit a verse, but instead he just lets the beat play out. And then finally, I just made sure the tempo of the intro and rest of the song were different because I wanted the vibe to be more psychedelic. And this is what we get for the final beat. Birds in the trap sing Mcknight. Pick up the phone, I know you're home, baby. Birds in the Trap is like when Travis went mainstream. Birds in the Trap Sing Mcknight is Travis's sophomore studio album and was also his first album to hit #1 on the Billboard 200. On this record, he was really pushing for that trap psychedelic sound, but a lot more trap inspired, with the use of bells, programmed drums, synth basses, and overall more robotic production. And all of these elements can be heard throughout the entire album, like the bells on Sweet Sweet and Goosebumps. But something we can also hear on a lot of these songs is a prolonged intro and then a heavy synth bass hitting, like on The Ends or Goosebumps.
Okay, I got it.
Goosebumps layers its song with a reversed piano with pitch bends, as well as a good sub bass and a live electric guitar. And The Ends also uses bells and a synth bass, and something else I realized is that there are 808 and bass slides all over this album. So I started off this beat by finding a good bell loop off of Splice, as well as a percussion loop, and I chopped and screwed both of them a bit, basically meaning I stretched them out, pitched them down, and chopped them to sound like how I wanted them to sound. And this is what I got for the intro. Next, I needed to work on the layering, so I played the notes for the bell in the piano roll using an electric piano, and then reversed it and added a bass with sliding notes for the bridge before the verse. And this is what it sounds like. In order to keep things different, I gave the song 2 alternating parts between the bells and the reversed piano during the verse section, but keeping the same drums. I made sure to keep the drums creative but very empty for background vocals and ad-libs. Just an interesting hi-hat pattern, some shakers leading up to the snare, and then basic kicks. One thing I also noticed Travis does on this album is that he uses a lot of funky basses, like on the song SDP Interlude, which is also a sample, which is crazy because I just found that out. And the most common synths used during this album are the Moog and the Juno. So right before the verse plays, I decided to add this funky bass to it, and I did something interesting. I found a Juno preset, added some chorus to it, and then this is the pattern I got. I didn't want to add too much to this beat. After everything was done, this is what I got for the final beat. Now let's move on to ASTROWORLD. ASTROWORLD is Travis Scott's most successful album to date, selling over 500,000 copies first week, and obviously charting #1 on the Billboard. This album is known for its heavily saturated and psychedelic aesthetic, and some songs off this album that encapsulate this perfectly are songs like Stargazing, Skeletons, and Butterfly Effect. Okay, now I'm gonna be honest with you, making this beat took me so fucking long. I actually had to go through tens of videos, break down every single song from this album, and I kinda realized that there's a reason not a lot of these remakes online are very accurate. This album is incredibly produced, but after a week I was finally able to break it down. I mean, for this beat I already knew the direction I wanted to go in. I wanted to take inspiration from Butterfly Effect for the intro and verse, Skeletons for the bridge / build up, and then Stargazing for the beat switch, because it's not an ASTROWORLD beat without a beat switch. So for the intro, I chopped a good flute preset I found on Splice, layered it with an 808 that's fading in, and I obviously added a chant to the intro and portions of the verse, similar to that of No Bystanders. And then once the verse starts, I layered the flute with a choir that has some gross beat on it, panned to the right and pitched up, which sounds like a lot of the choirs used on ASTROWORLD. But then I had to get the most important part of the song right, the drums, which wasn't really that hard. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was just trial and error. But ASTROWORLD is just known for its amazing drum patterns, whether complex or simple. They perfectly executed what they were going for. So I played this simple 2-step hi-hat pattern with some small rolls. I added the kick pattern on top of the 808 in open hat roll. I know that sounds weird, but trust me, it sounds good with the beat. Then I ended it off with an interesting snare pattern that gets more tame as the 4-bar loop comes to an end. After that, I made sure to add a small pause at the end of every 4 bars, similar to Stargazing, and then 2 perk hits when the pause happens. And this is what the drums sounded like. For the bridge, I played around with some leads. I mean, this is what my piano roll looked like. If you know, you know. Shout out Rio Leva. I made sure to cut out the high end during the actual bridge and then add a nice acoustic bass with slide notes because you can hear them on Skeletons. And obviously, I turned the normal hi-hat into a live hi-hat loop. I forgot to mention, I also brought the chant back in for the bridge and then layered it with some strings. Then for the beat switch, I had those sliding notes used in the bridge loop over, get more unfiltered. I boosted the high end and had them pan everywhere, and then right before the beat switch I had the loop completely stop, similar to the stop on Stargazing. And then for the second beat, I found a good guitar loop off Splice, chopped it, layered it with some plucks, and then I reversed the plucks. I added a chorus, EQ, and flanger to the guitar loop. I also pitched it up 5 semitones for the first 16 bars, and then down 7 for the next 16, similar to Stargazing. If you notice, the pitch goes up and then down during the first and second half of the beat switch. And then for the drums, I used a crazy hi-hat pattern, 808s and a kick, a rim shot on the 3 and 7, and some background snares. I mixed the drums with saturation and distortion, as well as fresh air on the hi-hats and background snare, and 808s on the reverb. And I know it sounds weird, but you can hear it used on ASTROWORLD from time to time. It'll make more sense when you hear it, trust me. I know my explanation was all over the place for this beat. My laptop's also kind of on 1 HP, but this is what we get for our final ASTROWORLD beat. Okay, now time for Utopia. Utopia is Travis's most recent album and also might be known for the wrong reasons. I think the most noticeable music element that's all over this album are the drums. I mean, just listen to tracks like Hyena and Modern Jam. These drums are just different, man. They're live, clean and gritty drums, but they still give Travis enough space to rap over them. But he doesn't go too old school with this album, cause he still manages to make it sound so futuristic with his use of synths like on Thank God. So for the beat we're gonna be making today, I wanted to take inspiration from 3 songs on this album: Hyena, Thank God and Sirens. Hyena for those drums, Thank God for that repetitive bell and bass hit, and then Sirens for that unique bridge. So the first thing I did was structure my song. I'm gonna have it be intro, verse, bridge, verse, outro, since many songs on Utopia were very short and sweet. So before I started on the intro, I reminded myself that the one thing I really want to prioritize on this track is that cinematic production, because that's really what makes Utopia stand out. When you think of songs like My Eyes or Telekinesis, the transitions are seamless. There's a lot of ambience and it's heavy on that atmospheric production and uniqueness. So for the intro, I used the synth bass with distortion, a random preset from Splice Instruments called Astral Forms, a pitched up bell with delay, and then a violin string with reverb for ambience. All layered with 2 kicks and some vocal chops similar to Sirens, and this is what I got for the intro. Now moving on to the melody, while I was doing my research on this album, I came across a certain song. Yeah, the exact sample that was used in Sirens. And now that I found out it was an African sample, it gave me a foundation. And I went through tens of splice packs until I found the perfect loop. I ended up finding this African flute loop. Yeah, this African flute loop that I stretched to match the BPM and then pitched to make it in key, and it sounded like this. Next was the bridge. For the bridge, I used some of the vocal chops during the intro. I got some bright synth pads and cut out the high end. I layered the bridge with an ascending string progression and then a synth bass. Then I converted the entire pattern into an audio file and tried to give it that high quality distorted sound that Utopia has plastered all over it. And this is what it sounded like. After that, it was time for some drums. And after I did some deep listening sessions, I found out that it was a tambourine layered with some kicks and snares on Hyena. So that's the pattern I added to my beat. And then I also made sure to layer it all with an 808 to make sure it stays trap-esque and maintains that futuristic sound. And after everything, this is what I got for my final beat. I hope this video helped you guys out. All beats are available on my second channel, which will be on screen. Let me know what you want to see next and make sure to subscribe. Click here to learn about Kendrick Lamar's writing. and here to learn about Frank Ocean's, and have a good one.